So today is the last day of my week off of uni and I'm still absolutely exhausted. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about burnout and how things like stress and constant pressure to work can affect you psychologically and physically. Sometimes people are expected to work constantly, or at least far beyond the time that they're set out in their job. Things like overtime, or being called outside of work, or as a student constantly being expected to improve myself. Now, there's nothing wrong with this in small doses, of course, but when it's a long-term thing, it can have quite severe effects. For instance, stress can cause death. Literally, that's the worst possible outcome of being stressed, is dying. Long-term stress can in fact cause severe organ failure. This is why it should be taken a lot more seriously than it is. Even if it doesn't kill you, being stressed suppresses your immune system and makes you more susceptible to getting just general illnesses like colds or the flu. So even though if you're working overtime, it might, give you those few extra hours, having to take a week off because you have a cold, well, suddenly that doesn't balance out. Even if it's not physical, long-term mental strain is unhealthy. Constantly working and constantly being at kind of a high level of just doing stuff isn't healthy. People need rest. People need physical and mental rest. Believe it or not, about 20% of your daily calorific needs are just so you can think. Now, for most people, that's quite a lot. So you can see that having to think even more is a genuine strain on your body. And the final outcome of this strain is people burn out, or they get bored with what they're doing. Because what's the point? It just hurts them. And this is the kind of thing that in my daily life I try to combat. Now, because there's this kind of pressure to constantly be improving and constantly doing things, it can make it feel like you need to put your health second. And that's moronic. You absolutely shouldn't put your health second. Because like I said, if you start losing time because you're ill or because you can't mentally take it anymore, then what was the point in putting in all that additional effort in the first place? And you get it a lot with people, especially in creative industries, but also just in general, where they no longer care anymore, where they've used themselves up to the point where they leave what they're doing, because it's no longer worthwhile to them, because their motivation has been killed. Now, I'm not saying that if you do like a few hours here and there, it's gonna kill you and you're never gonna want to do it again. But long term, this can just kill you or kill your desires. Now, that's why in your day-to-day life, you should consider how you're treating your body and your mind. It is absolutely okay to use stress as a valid excuse, and I really wish it was more acceptable, because being stressed is a serious thing, and coping with that stress is also a serious thing. Sometimes people just need to take a day off, and it's much better to take that day off than to live with the repercussions of stress. Now, I know I titled this video Burnout, but it does seem to be a bit more about stress. So, my main fear is that being a university student, I see this in quite an extreme situation. As I said, I had a week off, but the week before, it was the deadlines, and people were in constantly until when university closed, and people got ill a lot, even in the beginning. Some people would stay all weekend, and then they couldn't come in Monday for their actual lectures because they'd made themselves sick. And this is the kind of thing I worry about, especially in industries such as animation and video games and films, where that kind of overtime, that kind of working until this project is finished is put above people's health. Now, there was that outrage with Red Dead Redemption 2 recently, where it was misconstrued that people have been working hundreds of hours a week, 100 hours weeks. Now, while that wasn't true, there is still an expectation for people to keep working. Now, obviously, if you're not doing your job, then things are going to get behind, but people still shouldn't be forced to work like that. There are cases where people in their 30s and 40s in animation, relatively high up if I remember though, ended up dying of heart attacks because of stress, because they'd work constantly, because they couldn't eat properly, they didn't sleep properly. And all of these are incredibly dangerous to people. And I feel like sometimes passion is seen as an excuse to not take care of yourself. Just because you're passionate about something, just because you really want to do something, doesn't mean you should throw away your health to do it. Sure, you want to get this game finished, but if you're going to fall asleep for 3 days and barely be able to function, and you're not eating during those days, then you shouldn't be doing that. And I think also there's kind of a pressure from consumers on these industries to have things by a certain date. And you know, these are things created by humans, and people need rest. They're not robots. I would much rather, as a consumer, have to wait a few days or weeks or even a month more to receive a product and have no one hurt in the process of that being made than I would have it come out on time and discover someone who worked on this game had ended up severely ill because of what me and thousands of others had forced on these people. Obviously, people shouldn't constantly push back deadlines because, well, it creates a sense of, I wouldn't say bad practice, but I think that if, say, things have been a bit too hard on your staff, then that should be a relatively good excuse, but also that things like games and films should be kind of planned within a safe and healthy level of how much time it will take to produce them. No one should be forced to work hundreds of hours in a month. I mean, if they want to, maybe now and then, if they just want to polish things up a bit before the final deadline. But I genuinely think that as a society, things like stress and mental health need to be taken a lot more seriously. Ever since I was taught about stress when I was younger and how severe it is, I have tried to keep that in mind. But I'm often aware that I don't look after myself as well as I could. I know sometimes I push myself too hard, and even though I make myself ill or I just feel like shit, I still feel like I've not done as much as other people, because, you know, they stayed there from like 9 a.m. till like 10 p.m. and I was there for like half that. But, you know, I got a good night's rest, so screw those guys. I think that in today's society, there's this expectation of everything being constant. And while sometimes I agree, like, you know, I wish more places were 24 hours so I could eat at like 11 p.m. I do still think you need to allow for individual people's happiness and health. And part of that is in understanding stress. Now, obviously, for companies, it can seem a bit unnecessary to take into consideration. After all, they are trying to make money most of the time. Not everything is a product of pure passion. And obviously, letting, you know, half their staff go home at like 5 every day, as well as losing like a few days here and there because they need the time off, is not good for them. But for individual people, it is. Now, obviously, not everyone is like this, and I know that I personally am the lower end of what can take stress. Some people are good with stress, and, you know, their hearts won't give out, but there should be this allowance, which shouldn't be abused, of course, that allows people who are stressed to take the time they need. Now, it can seem like a disadvantage, and I know people will say things like, oh, well, you should just make it up. You know, you should just push yourself that little bit more, other people can do it. And the thing is, yeah, they probably can for a bit, but not everyone can keep going forever. And being the kind of person who needs to take days here and there, I know in myself that what I'm doing is far healthier than constantly working myself to death, but I can't help but feel that to other people it looks like laziness. And yeah, sometimes I joke, you know, I had to take that day off because I just didn't want to get out of bed, but it is a legitimate excuse to want to look after yourself, and I don't think that should be frowned upon. But obviously the issue is you can't tell the difference between someone who's stressed and someone who, you know, just wants a day off. It's unfortunate, and there's no real clean-cut answer. But it's just something that's been on my mind, especially with the fact I'm going back tomorrow. So I'm very stressed again. But hopefully I'll be able to cope. So I haven't made real videos for a while. That's kind of a mix of reasons, but anyway, I'm back again. Hi. I'm gonna try and make videos again, and I will try and steal back my microphone so the sound quality improves. But yeah, so apparently you can't just subscribe to people anymore, you also have to turn on alerts, which is great thanks to YouTube. It's not like that's why people subscribe to people. So yeah, please subscribe to me. It makes it like slightly more motivating to make videos, despite the fact I just like complaining. And plus I'm nearly at 100, so come on, like a few more of you. Anyway, thank you.